Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maureen O'Connor from Quilters Heaven in Northbrook, Illinois, and I am the Opinionated Quilter. Today's episode, number 111, is Let's Talk Cutting Machines. Stay tuned for the winner of the Flutter quilt top and the announcement of this week's giveaway. But before we get to that, I want to go over a lesson in efficiency. We made our own striped fabric to make the Easy Stripe table runner. And we made 3 from the fabric requirements. Here's my Easter version. What I did is I sewed together the 3 backs of the fabric. And I'm going to put them on the long arm at the same time, lay down one batting that covers for all of them, and quilt them at the same time. I got a whole piece from this fabric, which was the outside one. This was the most inside fabric, plenty here for the whole table runner. And I had to piece this last one here, that was the biggest width strip, was not enough to make the full width. But I had enough of this one, which again was the most innermost, and that piece together made a width big enough. So I just sewed them together, and it did not come out quite even. Here you can see I didn't cut exactly perfectly. So what you want to do, and I know so many of you, when you give me things to put on the long arm, you think that's close enough. But really, you need these square. And you need them square because if I marked the middle of this fabric and the middle of this fabric, it would be on a diagonal. You want your backs on exactly even. So don't forget to do this before you take this to your long armor. Now, if you were going to do these at home on a domestic machine, you would probably do them one at a time. This is if you have a long arm or if you're going to give it to your long armor. Now, for me, I think this just makes sense to do. But you should check with your long armor first and make sure that he or she will take the 3 backs together and let you put them, have he or she put them on the long arm as one piece. Before we get to the episode, I know when I have a colorful quilt like this behind me, you will all ask, what is the pattern? This is my alternating squares that I made with scraps, and we do have a pattern for it. We will have a link in the description box. Now, let's talk cutting machines. Before we get to the machines themselves, let's talk about the types of cutting that quilters do. We cut strips. We cut the strips into squares and rectangles. We also cut triangles, diamonds, parallelograms, trapezoids. Many of these are pieces that are put into specific units or into specific overall quilt designs. We also cut applique shapes. We cut stars and hearts and leaves and flowers. These are much more difficult to cut with a scissors than they are from a machine precisely cutting them. We cut specific pattern pieces, and that is usually to make some sort of a picture of something. We did an episode before where I showed taking coloring book pages. I had sunglasses and flip-flops, all kinds of things, baseball diamond, that I had pictures and then I cut them out, but I appliqued them on the domestic machine. And what I talked about last week with power tools with thread, Becky takes those cutting files and turns them into embroidery files. But either way, embroidery files or domestic machine, you still have to cut out the shapes. Generally, when we're cutting things for quilting, these we're cutting lots and lots. You know, I'll have somebody come in and say, I had to cut 366 half square triangles. When you're doing the applique shapes, while there may be many, many leaves, generally you're doing one block and then you cut more shapes, different shapes for another block. Now, before we move on to the machines, I just want to quickly say, when I'm talking about cutting traditional way with rulers and rotary cutters, I'm talking about people who have the ability to do that. Many of us, as we have grown older, we have gotten issues with our hands, whether it's arthritis or some customers have gotten a tremor and they can't cut with the traditional method. In those cases, any machine is better than not being able to cut at all. So as I'm discussing this, I'm discussing it as between someone who can use traditional methods for both the rotary cutting and the machines, not someone who cannot cut at all with a rotary cutter. Now we're going to move down and show you the different machines. So this is the Go fabric cutter, which this is the hand crank model. I think most of my customers that have one now have the electric one that you don't have to hand crank. But the Go cutter has specific dies for every single shape that you make. So here's the 2.5-inch strip one, and you can just keep feeding fabric in here. I think they go up maybe up to 4 layers or so cut at a time, but you can get a lot of these cut really fast. The issue is that you need a die for every single shape that you cut. So to me, with the amount of waste that this makes, I could do it much more efficiently with a ruler and a rotary cutter. The shapes that I thought made the most sense for this kind of cutter are things that are much more difficult to cut. If you're doing hearts, for example, or stars, if you had to make, say, 50 stars of the exact same size and you cut them out with the scissors, you would not get 50 identical stars. They might be close, but they're not going to be identical. So this works great if you're going to use one of these kinds of shapes. Here's an alphabet, and you need 2 dies to get the whole alphabet, but you only get 1 font. But if this is the font you want, you can crank them out. Now the problem is you're probably not going to need a whole lot of X's and Y's and Z's, at least X's and Z's. Y's, of course, in a lot of letters and names. But you have to feed the whole thing through to get the letters that you want. I shouldn't say the whole thing. If you didn't need anything from down here, you could put a piece of fabric in here. But you probably would get a letter or 2 cut out that you didn't need. One of my biggest issues with the AccuQuilt is the waste. And one of the things that I see in this, this is a great example. This is a hunter star. And if you look at how the die is made, you can see that the pieces are all right close together. There's the 2 diamond shapes, and there's the trapezoid in between, and then the triangle. Now, this works fine if you're doing a 2-color quilt and that this is the size that you want to make. The issue for me is I like to make more than 2-color hunter stars. I've done ones with several different colors, but just as an example, The first hunter star I made was a 3-color. The star points were gold, and what's red and white here was green and red. And if you had to feed your green and reds through this die, you would get star points cut out of every single fabric that you're not going to use. So a whole lot of waste. The other issue is that these pieces are cut absolutely precisely perfect. Well, that means you have to sew absolutely precisely perfect, and most of us don't do that. That's why I like the method of oversizing a little bit and then trimming down. So for me, a specialty hunter star ruler like Deb Tucker's that gives you 4 sizes per ruler is a better option than using the die cutter for the Go. So if we review, the Go cutter needs dies for each shape, can cut lots fast, but has more waste than with a ruler and rotary cutter. The other thing I want to show you now is the Brothers ScanNCut. Let's take a break and rearrange. I recently bought the Brothers ScanNCut because I'm so intrigued with this idea of being able to do applique all in the hoop, in addition to being able to make an applique pattern from anything that you can scan. So I decided that I was going to practice on a simple shape, simple project. And I found this Muppets book from 2008, and I decided I was going to do Kermit. So you need 2 scans to do this. You need the overall picture and you need the individual pattern pieces. So I went ahead and I copied the Kermit page, and then I cut apart the pieces so that I could separate them. So I scanned both the full picture and the copy of the pieces and scanned them into the ScanNCut. And then the Brother software Canvas Workspace lets you group your like fabrics together, and then you cut out your pieces. And I am now getting this applique down. I got the collar down and his head down, and my machine started acting kind of crazy yesterday, so I am going to continue on working on this. But in my in the software, I do have the eyes satin stitched onto here. And so I'm going to continue to work on it. It's not perfect. It's my very first attempt. I need a wider satin stitch, but that's okay. All that can be fixed. What's so intriguing to me, like I said, is being able to do everything all in the hoop. That's, like I said, 5 or 6 pieces if you count 2 for the eyes. I'm thinking, what about all these old Ellie Sienkiewicz patterns? All this intricate applique that she has done. There's all kinds of things. All you have to do this is go ahead and copy it, cut apart the pieces, and then scan the whole unit. And once you know how to work the software, you could do this all in the hoop, where Ellie obviously did everything by hand. I just see so many possibilities. This isn't anything you would ever do on an AccuQuilt because they aren't going to have all these different patterns that you would need to do this. Now, the Kermit was my very first attempt, but what Becky is showing on Power Tools with Thread is she's using Amy Bradley designs. She's actually doing the Halloween quilt now. I see 4th of July coming up, and I decided I wanted to do something from this pattern of hers. So what's the simplest one on here? I think it's the Liberty Bell. So that's what I decided to do. And while I had to cut apart the pieces to make the Muppets pattern, all of these Amy Bradley patterns come with 2 pattern sheets per, with this one with those pieces separated, and then this one with the placement diagram, how everything gets put together. Her patterns are so dang cute that I've got them in the store. I just don't know which one I want to tackle once I really know how to do this. But she's got the backyard friends. She's got the woodland animals. This one, a customer of mine made the quilt all totally hand applique. And then she's got this cute ocean one. I see one of these being a bib for a little toddler. But anyway, the choices are really endless. You can purchase a pattern that has the designs you need, or you can download a coloring book page, or like Kermit from an old book that was applique the traditional way. But once you scan your pieces, the machine lets you move the pieces further apart so that you can place your fabric correctly. And then you feed that through the machine and it cuts everything for you. Now, I believe you can see this all pretty well here. This I ran through. This is the Liberty Bell. And once it comes out, you just lift off your fabric that's been cut out. And yes, this is waste, but I don't think it's substantially more waste than you would have if you had ironed the fusible backing onto a piece of fabric and cut it out with scissors. Here's my Liberty Bell and rope. And then here is the top part of it, and it just comes off. And there you have them. And they say don't pull and stretch your pieces, that you should use the spatula to pick these up. So you would just lift them all up and everything's perfect. You would just not get this as perfect if you had used scissors. And that's what I like about the ScanNCut. So I don't know that I would buy the ScanNCut if I didn't want to do applique, because you're not going to cut 300 half square triangles on this. So let's talk about that. We'll review. The ScanNCut can cut anything that you can scan. You usually cut one layer at a time. You make that block and then you move on to the next block. Yes, there's waste. There's just not as much waste. I shouldn't say that. There's equal amount of waste, or maybe slightly more waste than if you did it traditionally with the scissors. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work on these projects and get the hole in the hoop mastered. But for now, I'm having a blast. So I would never say one machine is better than the other. They serve two entirely different purposes. So it's what are you going to use the machine for, and which one makes it most efficient for you. Now, let's get to the winner of this week's giveaway. The winner of the Flutter quilt top is Doreen Stewart, 7341. Doreen, please email me at quiltersheaveninc@gmail.com with your address so I can get it out to you. Now, this week's giveaway is it's called Amaryllis. It's by Nancy Mahoney. It's 43, the pattern is by Nancy Mahoney. It was not made by Nancy Mahoney. It's 43 inches square. It came from the book called Fast Fusible Flowers. And in order to be considered to win, you need to subscribe to my channel. You need to like this video and comment. You need to put in the comment the word Amaryllis. So that is this week's episode. Until next time, happy sewing.